Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar. My name is James White, and I'll be one of your hosts today. Next slide, please. The topic today is a 30-minute keynote demonstration of Fitrix ERP for electronics presented by our manufacturing product manager and expert, Randy Johnson. And before Randy starts, I have a 4-minute introduction of Fitrix. Next slide, please. So Fitrix ERP is a 21-module end-to-end ERP software suite. It's designed for small and medium-sized electronic manufacturers. All the modules are integrated. There's no double entry. There's a consistent user interface throughout the whole product. It runs on a state-of-the-art SQL relational database. Next slide, please. There are 11 manufacturing modules in Fitrix. Supports advanced and complex manufacturing as needed. Also supports make to order, make to stock, engineer to order, job shop, and mix mode. Next slide, please. These are the distribution supply chain modules that are part of Fitrix. Fitrix supports a high volume order entry, and there's also an integrated CRM. Next slide, please. And Fitrix has a full suite of accounting financial modules. Next slide, please. So Fitrix is specifically designed for the small and mid-sized electronic manufacturer. We've priced and packaged the product so it's affordable, it's easy to implement, and Fitrix is designed to grow with your business. It's flexible, easy to use, but it can also handle more complex requirements, as you'll see some of today. We can also show you how to use our rapid implementation program and go live in 90 days. Next slide, please. So these are the key features that are typically required in electronics manufacturing. Deep serial number and lot number tracking is almost always a requirement. Warranty tracking, quality, compliance, ROHAS. You'll see some other features here. Next slide, please. And this is a list of other features that we found are typically needed, often needed by electronic manufacturers. Barcoding at any step of the way. Contract manufacturing, which we support either as supplier or consumer or both. Blanket orders, approved vendor list, credit management. Next slide, please. So we are fourth generation software, and we're the makers of Fitrix. We've been making and implementing ERP software for many years. We have a very high implementation success rate. Our focus is on results, and we're focused on your success. Our customers tell us our support is way above average. Next slide, please. Just a quick highlight of one of our customers. MCE is a contract manufacturer. They make high-end servers, rack-based servers. Before they implemented Fitrix, they were tracking a lot of their manufacturing processes on spreadsheets and by hand, and basically didn't have any way to grow any further. They told us that within 6 months of implementing Fitrix, they've been able to cut their inventory cost in half because they didn't have to way overstock to keep things moving. Next slide, please. So now Randy Johnson is going to show us the highlights of Fitrix ERP for electronics in 30 minutes. Randy?
Thank you, James, and good afternoon, everybody. As James mentioned, I'm going to be going through a workflow this afternoon that just shows you how you can produce an item to stock and then sell that item from stock on a customer order to a sales order to a customer. One of the things I want to focus on, as James mentioned, was the ease of which you can work with options within Fitrix to handle some of the more basic business functions, but also offer you the flexibility that electronics manufacturers need to do some things that might deviate from a basic plan. And we want to show you that the software has the flexibility to support that, not making you jump through hoops to get your job done. The functions that I'm going to be showing you today will be executed from our Fitrix main menu, which you see here. And our most basic menu is rendered to the user in a tiled or layered approach where the user selects options that display tiles of submenus that eventually get you to options that execute programs that either display screens or generate reports. We give you the ability to define something called a role-based menu. You can define as many roles within your company as you like, and each role can be constructed so that that role contains only the menu options that the user needs to get their job done. So I'm going to go to a role that we set up here for the demonstration, and you'll be able to see here that we come up with a very simple menu that the user can work with and essentially stay in one place to do their job throughout the day. And again, we can set up multiple roles for the different functions within your business. So the first thing I'm going to do is work with a production order here. Production orders in Fitrix serve multiple uses and can be accessed in several different places within the software, depending on the kind of business that you're executing. James mentioned our mixed mode of manufacturing, and if you're in a make-to-stock environment where you're using the material planning applications to generate long-term production plans from sales forecast and sales orders, the planning applications will automatically release production orders based on your production plan. If you're in a make-to-order environment, you can automatically generate production orders from a sales order that you place directly with the customer. In this case, we're going to be doing a manual entry of a production order because in this case we're going to build an item and place it into stock. So we're going to be building a laptop computer. So I'm going to go ahead and start the process for a new order. We can see that we have order numbers that are automatically generated by the system. You can use those numbers or override to whatever order numbering sequence you prefer. We'll be working with a Mac laptop computer here that we're going to produce into our Miami production facility or warehouse. So we can see that by typing in the item number and the warehouse that we're going to produce to, descriptions automatically pop up, and a lot of the information that's needed to start this order has automatically been filled in for us. I'm going to say that I want to produce 3 units of this laptop. It's assuming a start date of today, and a due date can automatically be calculated based on the lead times that have been set up for this manufactured item. Lead times can be a fixed lead time that would be independent of the number of units made, or it could be a variable lead time that would vary with the number of units produced. I'm going to override both of those and tell the system that I just want to produce this laptop PC today. The order type is ST for stock. As I already mentioned, we're building this to stock. And if I jump down here to the bottom, you'll see flags for the bill of material and standard routing. Fitrix supports the definition of multiple bills of material for an item, and this is particularly useful to companies in the electronics manufacturing business because typically the management of revision levels is a very high priority. And the bill of materials codes here can be used to identify one or more than one bill of material based on a current revision level. I'm going to work with a bill of material code called MFG for both the bill and the routing, and that would just be the current bill of material that would be used for production execution as well as for long-term planning. You can see over here to the right that I have some additional flags on bill of material and routing that give me the option at the time I'm entering the order to work directly with the bill of material and directly with the labor routing so that I can make whatever changes are needed here as part of the initial entry process. And this harkens back to some of the flexibility that we're talking about in working with the basic version of the software versus some of the more advanced features. So if I just want to create an order here for the laptop and use the standard bill of material that's currently in place, I can do that, save the order on this screen, and I don't have to go any further. I'm ready to take the next step in the workflow. But in this case, I know that I want to work with the bill of material that's coming in as a standard and potentially make a change to it. So I'm going to select OK to save this order. And the next thing that comes up is the list of standard components that come from that bill of material that I already mentioned. And we can see that we have several common items that are fairly typical for a laptop. For each one of these items, we can see that these are stock items that are going to be issued to this production order as part of a production receipt transaction that I'm going to show you in just a couple of minutes. It shows me the required quantity for those component items as well as the date that's required. In this case, today's the date because I'm going to start the order today and finish it today. For each of these items, it also shows me the current on-hand balance, and of that on-hand balance, how much is available. You can see for most of these items that the available quantity is the same as the on-hand. In the case of the keyboard, the second item on the list, we see an available quantity that's 1 unit less than what's on hand. And the point here is to note that we also keep track of prior commitments or prior reservations of component materials to other orders. Those could be other production orders that need a keyboard. They could be sales orders that have been entered to sell a keyboard directly. So in this case, we know that we have 1 unit of the keyboard committed and a net available of 58. If any of these components showed an available quantity that was less than the required quantity, there's an additional column over to the right of that here you see that would immediately show me that this component item is short. So for example, if I change the required quantity of the monitor to 10, I can immediately see that I have a shortage condition here. As we save this order, if any of those components show up as short, I will be prompted to have the option to create a purchase order immediately to address that shortage and tie that purchase order back to this production order. So at every step along the way, the system's helping me to determine where shortages might exist and how to address them. So I'm going to go ahead and put that back to a quantity of 3, and I'm also going to make a change here to the memory, so that because I know I want double the amount of memory, so I'm going to use 12 units for this overall order of 3 laptops. And I wanted to point out here too that in the interest of flexibility, for many electronics manufacturers, you're going to want to work directly with this list now. You may want to switch out the memory to a different size DIMM. You may want to add some component items to this order directly. The key to note here is that we're using a standard bill of material that can be modified for this specific order. We have a much more sophisticated product configurator that can be used to specify more user-oriented options that we'll cover in a different webinar. So I'm going to go ahead and save this list of components. And then here we can also see the standard labor steps that were set up. So I've got standard steps for assembly of the PC, installing the operating system and other software, and then doing a burn-in. In the interest of time, we're not going to cover the actual reporting of labor, but we do have obviously a very comprehensive labor routing that can be reported against in another module. Okay, so I've saved my production order. And the next step that we want to go through here is to generate a production packet. This is an optional document that is essentially used as a traveler that allows me to put it out to the floor and let my production workers have a common vehicle for accumulating any notes or recording any transaction-related information that might need to come back to the production area for reporting in the system. So I'm going to generate that document. It's going to come up to me as a PDF document in a viewer. So we'll display this document and then show you some of the detail that's included with the list of components and the labor step. Okay, so I'll shrink this down a little bit so it's a little more readable. And you can see then, as I scroll through this packet, we have an option for defining additional notes for an item that would print out at the top of the page immediately below the image for the laptop. You'll also notice that we do have an image for the laptop itself, as well as for the component materials that go into making up this laptop computer. We have a generic document attachment feature that allows you to attach 1 or more images, PDF documents, Word documents, any kind of electronic document that you like that can be attached to items, customers, employees, vendors, pretty much any specific document that we have in the system. In this case, we have additional logic built in that will automatically print the image for those component items on the production order in this packet to make it easier for the folks in the production area to recognize the items that are going to be used to make this laptop. So I have components with their images and then a routing that shows the different labor steps that are going to be executed to produce this item. So let me go back to the screen here. The next step in the workflow would be to print a production pick list. We'll go to PDF viewer for that as well. And this document is designed to be the material, a print of the material that's actually going to be shown to the picker that's going to pull the material from the bins or locations where that material is going to be needed. I'm just going to talk about that document because, again, in the interest of time, for component items that are serialized, we also print on that pick list the serial numbers for the items that are available so that the picker can record directly on that document the material that's going to be pulled from stock to support that production process. Okay, so let's assume that the actual production steps have been completed, and what we want to do now is record a production receipt transaction that's going to do several things. It's going to place the units of the laptop into inventory. I define the laptop as a serialized item, so as I'm recording the production, the system is going to prompt me to define or accept defaults for serial numbers for the laptops going into inventory. It's also, so here is the detail screen for those serial number assignments. You can see that we've automatically assigned those serial numbers. If you wanted to override those for this individual production run, you can enter your own serial numbers. In this case, I'm just going to accept the defaults. The cost is automatically built up for the item based on the materials that have been used, and if I had reported labor transactions, those would be included in the overall cost as well. And I can see that the component items that I had previously defined on the bill now show up in the bottom of the screen. They're going to automatically be issued from stock as well. So this is referred to as backflushing. If I had longer lead time items, I can specify or define a separate transaction for issuing material to an order called a component issue. So I can separate the issue of material from the completed production of the end item at the end of the process. I'm going to go ahead and select these as is, and now you'll see a series of detail screens that pop up that allow me to verify the serial numbers for the component materials that have been used in this production process. Remember, I mentioned on the pick list, the production worker is typically going to record the items that have been reserved, or excuse me, that have actually been pulled for use in this production process. And here I'm recording them with keystrokes on the keyboard. We have alternate screens that are available that will let you scan the serial numbers for those items directly from a pick list. So that if you want to use the barcode equipment, you just scan a serial number, it automatically verifies that and records it against the order. So it can be a very quick process in a barcode environment. Some of these items are not serialized, but we also have support for multiple bin locations in the system, so I can record the actual bin location that items were pulled from. So I'm going to do that for each of the items here that were not serialized. And then lastly, the memory that I pulled is not a serialized item, but it is a lot controlled item. So here I've got a lot of 100 units of memory that came in when I bought them from the vendor. The lot number assigned was 20131101, and I'm going to go ahead and pull the 12 units from that lot. So now the production receipt's been recorded, and as I mentioned just a second ago, there are several pieces of the puzzle were addressed here in terms of the overall production flow. I put 3 units of the laptop into inventory, and I reduced inventory by all of the components that you see listed here. So it's a very simple, straightforward screen that allows you to do a lot of work in terms of updating inventory, updating work in process, and all of these transactions are seamlessly passed over to the financial application as general ledger transactions to record the proper movement of material from raw material through work in process into a finished good inventory account. We can also see that our serial number tracking was updated. I'm going to go ahead and do a search on my the Mac, and we'll look at one of the items that was just produced. So here we can see instantly as a result of the receipt that I've got the beginnings of my serial number tracking for this laptop computer with the serial number 4848. We can see down here that it was produced on this production order on this date, and we see what the engineering origin level was for that specific serial number. Don't see any sales order information yet because we haven't sold this item. I've got another breakdown of serial composition that I can look at for that same item. And we'll bring up that same serial number. And here we can see the serial numbers and lots that went into the production of this item and its related items. So again, as we mentioned earlier in the webinar, we've got full serial traceability from purchased item all the way up through sold item, so I can trace for a sales item, an item that I'm producing or selling. I can look at the breakdown of its components and then break each of these further down if I need to find out where I bought them, when I bought them, who the vendor was, and so forth. Okay, so now we have our item in inventory. We want to go ahead and sell it to a customer. I'm going to go into customer order entry here. I'm going to add a new sales order to the system. All of our control information has the ability to do searches and lookups, so I'm going to go ahead and jump to a lookup screen for my customer because I don't necessarily know what the customer code is. I'm actually talking to an individual on the phone right now. He's told me that he's Bill, and I'm going to go ahead and do a search on that contact and see that I have a Bill Walker and a Bill Spring. He confirms that he's Bill Walker. I know that I'm working with Action Auto Parts, so I'm going to go ahead and select the Action Auto Parts customer code. I'm going to enter a purchase order number, and we can see that this customer, Action Auto Parts, has a couple of different shipping locations. Bill's confirmed to me that he wants me to ship it to him in the California office, so I'm going to select that ship to. I also have notes that can be defined ahead of time. In this case, we have notes that are defined for the customer that can be ticklers for the order taker to actually mention some additional information to the customer. In this case, we want to let them know that if they order at least $15,000 of product, we'll give them a 5% discount. We also can see that we have credit notes for this customer, limiting the order placement to $25,000 for this credit, or excuse me, for this customer. We have a pretty rich credit approval process here where we will look at the total value of open invoices to the customer as well as open orders that have not yet been invoiced, and we can automatically flag this order as being placed on hold if that's appropriate for this customer and this order. Whenever we place an order on hold, we'll automatically send emails to the salesperson involved with the order to let them know that the order has been placed on hold, and we've got flexibility built into it as well that will allow us to continue processing the order and hold it for shipment, or we may decide, based on the level of hold that we've defined here, that we may want to stop the process altogether here to keep that order from being taken any further with the customer. Here we see also shipping notes that we're going to notify Bob Johnson at Action Auto Parts when these shipments leave the warehouse. I'm going to go ahead and store those notes with the order. Then we're going to drop down to the bottom of the screen here and actually identify the item that we want to sell to the customer. Now, when I was in production, I was very familiar with the production of that laptop, and I knew that the item code that I wanted to work with was a CMAC. The order taker is going to be taking orders for many different kinds of product and may not know the individual product number as well as somebody in the production area, so they're going to do a search. They know that the item that they want to work with starts with a C, so I'm going to enter a wildcard value here that's going to present a list of items that start with a C so that I can pick them from the list. And here again, you see the documents that we've attached to these items showing images to help us visualize the items that are going to be ordered. So in this case, I'm going to go ahead and select that CMAC. We'll bring that back to the order entry screen. As soon as I selected that item, we can see that there's a note that's set up for the item. So I not only have customer notes, but I have item notes. So here we have a tickler again to the sales order taker that if the customer buys an extended warranty, they can do that at this time. I'm going to just place an order quantity for 1 here. You can see that I have the ability to look up some additional information related to item availability here. I'm going to go ahead and select that, and I can see that for the multiple warehouses in which I stock the laptop, I can see what I have on hand, what's been committed to other orders, and what's available for sale at this particular moment. If an item had an insufficient quantity on hand, it would automatically be placed on back order, and that back order process would send a tickler to the production department to go ahead and start production on additional units to satisfy the demand here. If I want to look at more detail for what this, for example, this committed quantity of 3, I can go to a detail window and see the actual sales orders that require this particular laptop with their quantities and the dates that they're needed. So that's always available to the order taker. So I'm going to go ahead and stay with my quantity of 1. Price comes up automatically as $999. This item can be incorporated into the pricing flexibility that we have built into the system as well. So I have a base price of $999, but I can also define special pricing or discounting for this specific customer, for this specific item, for the combination of item and customer, and I can define those discounts to be a discount off of list price or a markup from cost. So I have a lot of flexibility built into the pricing here. You can pretty much price an item any way you want. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and save this order. I'm prompted for cross-sells. Let's just jump in and look at that real quick. I can see that I've defined some cross-sell items for this laptop. Additional items that I might want to just alert the customer to, that if you're placing the order for the PC, you might also want to buy an additional external keyboard or a mouse. I'm going to go ahead and cancel out of those for now. And my next automatic prompt is to print a pick ticket. This is going to be the document that an internal picker would use to go pull that laptop from inventory and make it available for shipment to the customer. So I'm going to say yes, let's print the pick ticket. I'm going to go to a PDF format for that as well. So here we're going to generate that pick ticket. And it's going to be, this is a document that's typically going to, again, be used by the individual that's pulling the material from the bin. It's going to show them choices at this point in terms of serial numbers that they might want to be able to pull, and let the user record the information that is related to this specific shipment to the customer. Okay, so here's the picking ticket. Here we see who we're selling it to, the ship to location, and the fact that we have 1 unit of a Mac laptop, and this is an area that would be reserved for the user to actually record the serial number of the units that were picked. And again, lending to a barcode environment, we don't have it turned on at this point, but the pick ticket can also print barcode that the user would then use for scanning for picking that material at the time of shipment. Okay, so we'll close out of the pick ticket here. Next step in the workflow would be to update the pick quantities for the sales order. This is where we're actually going to verify serial numbers that were pulled for this order. So I'm going to do an add. I'm going to go ahead and mark all items as picked, and just like we saw in the production area, here we see the shipping screen where we're going to verify the serial number for the item that's actually going to be shipped. In this case, I'm going to go ahead and pick one of those serial numbers that I just most recently produced. And again, we have barcode-oriented windows that pop up here, so rather than a user manually entering quantities, we could bring up an alternate window. The user could scan the serial number for this item and have the quantities automatically filled in. I'll go ahead and select this. We'll now be prompted to print a packing list. I'll go ahead and print that packing list. You'll see that the packing list is very similar in format to the picking ticket that we already showed, but this is going to be the document that would actually be typically placed either on the box outside of the laptop or inside the laptop. So here we see the verification for the serial number that was chosen. Go ahead and close out of that. And the last step in the process would be to create the actual invoice. This is a process that is typically run at the end of a day. If you have orders that are being staged for invoicing throughout the day, you can save the invoice generation process for the end of day. If there's a quick order that you need to get out and get invoiced immediately, we also have optional processes that allow you to do that a single order at a time. In this case, I've automatically generated that invoice for the order number 85. If I wanted to make changes to that generated invoice, I can interrupt it at this point and go directly into that invoice and make adjustments to it. Maybe I want to add additional freight charges or some miscellaneous charges for handling. I can do that directly on the order. In this case, I'm going to continue on, and here I'm going to be prompted now to actually print the invoice that was just generated, so I'm going to go ahead and do that. The print process takes advantage of a feature that we have called the Flex Direct, which lets you define ahead of time by customer specific types of documents and how the customer should be receiving those documents. And we give you choices for printing and mailing, emailing, faxing, or any combination of the three. And then you also have the ability to print an internal copy for your own archive. We're going to bypass this Flex Direct at this point, so I can just show you what the invoice looks like straight away. While this invoice is coming up, let me just discuss what the actual process of the invoice, processing of the invoice does internally in the system. There are a lot of different pieces that get brought together here for this process. First of all, I'm going to be taking the Mac laptop out of inventory, updating the on-hand quantity both for the total for the Mac laptop as well as the individual serial numbers that make up the shipment. I'm also going to be, when I post this invoice, sending a net invoice transaction over to the accounts receivable module to show that this invoice has been processed and it's now booked as an open receivable item for this customer, Action Parts. And I'm going to be creating transactions to the general ledger application that are going to record the movement of inventory, recording of the sales revenue, and booking to the overall accounts receivable balance. So the next step here would be to generate the edit list for the invoice. This is just a simple paper document that's going to show me what's about to happen in terms of all the processing steps that I just mentioned. Here we can see the booking to sales and revenue. We'll go ahead and close out of that. And then we'll go to the actual posting process. And this is the audit trail that shows you all the steps that I just mentioned. So this is everything from the movement of inventory, recording to accounts receivable, as well as booking booking of the entries to the general ledger application. So that's kind of the full round trip, taking me from starting a production through placing the completed item into inventory, tracking that item in the serial number tracking screen. Let's go there real quick, and we can see that we've had an update here. And here we see the item that we just recently produced, item on production order number 56, sold it on sales order number 85, and shipped it on the 7th of October today with a quantity of 1. We did not set this item up to be a warranted item, but if we had done that, we could have defined the number of warranty days. For example, we could say this item is subjected to a 90-day warranty period. If that were the case, when I shipped it, I would automatically calculate a warranty expiration date and then have the beginnings for keeping track of any warranty costs that might be associated with working with this item downstream after shipment. Okay, so that takes care of the workflow for showing how to produce and sell an item.